Hello and welcome everyone to our third Startup Global webinar of 2023, Dollars and Demographics. I'm Isabel Nolan, the Acting Program Manager for the Startup Women and Startup Global programs at Startup Canada. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I'm on today is located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. And I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territories that you're residing on today. Today's session is being recorded and we'll share the recording afterwards on our YouTube channel and Facebook page. I invite all of our attendees to introduce yourselves and connect with each other in the chat. Feel free to add your name, your organization, where you're joining in from, and make sure that you're sending your messages to everyone in the room. Zoom defaults it to only send to the hosts and panelists, so you just need to adjust it in the chat box to make sure you're speaking to everyone. So a little bit about Startup Canada, if you're not familiar with us. We're a national nonprofit that is the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business in Canada. Since launching in 2012, Startup Canada has grown to support more than 129,000 entrepreneurs annually and an ever-growing grassroots community network from coast to coast to coast. Startup Global is one of Startup Canada's flagship programs that connects a pan-Canadian cohort of entrepreneurs wanting to build global businesses with a network of partners dedicated to their success. This free program recognizes the importance of exporting to the Canadian economy, celebrating those making waves in the global marketplace and empowering early stage founders to take their ventures to the international stage. So just some quick housekeeping. We'd love to thank our co-presenting partners, Export Development Canada, Trade Commissioner Service and UPS and Desjardins, as well as our ecosystem support partners, Scotiabank, eBay, Google, North Forge, Trade Facilitation Office of Canada, GS1 Canada, Intellectual Property Institute of Canada, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, and Canadian Aboriginal Minority and Supplier Council. Without them, we simply couldn't go on with our program. So very, very big thank you to them. So today's conversation is focused on generating business in your target market. So a lot of startup companies are exploring international opportunities. Market segmentation helps entrepreneurs to send the right message every time by efficiently targeting specific groups of consumers, allowing them to maximize their growth and creating lasting connections with the desired customer base. We have prepared some questions for our panelists that I'll introduce to you in a moment. But please, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to add them to the Q&A box at the bottom function bar on your screen, and we'll do our best to answer it live. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers. Speakers, maybe when I say your name, you can just give a bit of a wave so everyone knows who you are. So firstly, we have Fabien Lichota, who is a Trade Commissioner with the Trade Commissioner Service. We have Udeoka, International Growth Consultant at Google, and Agyemang, Founder and Managing Partner of Maple Bridge Ventures. Very welcome to all of our speakers. How are you all doing today?
Wonderful. Very good. Thank you.
Great. Fantastic. So I'd love to start off with some introductions to each of you. So just a quick sentence or two of who you are, what you do, and the role you play within your organizations. Uchechi, I'm going to pass to you first.
Thanks, Isabel. Hi, everyone. My name is Uchechi, and I am currently an international growth consultant at Google, but I am an ad tech sales and marketing professional with almost 9 years experience in the industry. I am well versed in topics ranging from business development, international growth, customer success, relationship management, and just marketing communications in general. I have a master's in strategic marketing from London School of Business and Finance, and it's a pleasure to be on here with you all. Fabien, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. So as it was said at the beginning, my name is Fabien Lichota. I'm a trade commissioner within the Trade Commissioner Service, which belongs to Global Affairs Canada. So that very common and really big training to all across
Fabien, I'm so sorry. Your
yes.
internet is cutting out just a little bit. So I'm going to pass to Eric. If you want to just turn your camera on and off, or sorry, off and on, just it might help with the bandwidth. But it was just cutting out a little bit. So I'll pass to Eric first. I'm so sorry. Eric, if you'd like to go ahead, and then we'll go back to Fabien.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Isabel. I don't know if you can hear me fine. I hope there are no issues with my video. My name is Eric Agyemang. Up until recently, I worked with EDC, Export Development Canada, for 9 years. Through a time where I worked directly with Canadian exporters, taking their business on the international stage. So I've got a lot of experience working with different types of companies, from early stage growth and large multinationals. So to say that I'm passionate about exporting would be an understatement. My educational background is international trade, and recently I pivoted to start my own investment firm called Maple Bridge, where I really bridge two areas I've been very, very passionate about and I've done quite well in: supporting the Canadian early stage companies and targeting immigrants, because there's a deep belief that Canada's economy depends on immigrants and newcomers. So really wanted to specialize in that area and support the game changers as they try to build the next generation of innovative companies out of Canada. Super excited to be here with Startup Canada, an organization I've worked with during my days at EDC, and I know the wonderful work you guys are doing the ecosystem. So thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Eric. Fabien, if you want to come back on, hopefully the connections worked out a little bit better.
Yes, is it still cutting?
No, you're good. We just don't see your camera on anymore.
Yeah, I clicked. But let me still move on with my introductions. Should I start from the beginning?
Yeah, maybe just go from where a little bit about your role within the TCS.
Yes, so within the TCS, what I do on a daily basis is I provide training to our network of colleagues that are located in our 6 regional offices across Canada and in our missions abroad. And I also provide training to provincial partners, crown corporations, Chamber of Commerces, and also companies that are attending a webinar such as this one on FTAs, so free trade agreements. That's my expertise, and I will be able to share more today about that. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you to each of our speakers for being here. So yeah, we're going to just dive right in. So I explained, or I mentioned rather, a little bit about market segmentation in my introduction. And I really want to ensure that all of our attendees are on the same page as we get into the discussion. So Uchechi, I wanted to go to you first to explain, at a high level, what is market segmentation?
Market segmentation is a marketing term that involves aggregating potential customers or potential buyers of a particular company into groups, and in a way that ensures that branding, products are all tailored to that particular group. And most times these groups usually have like common needs or common belief systems, and they are believed to elicit the same desired action from the customer, from the company or from the organization targeting them. So in a nutshell, it's just the process of grouping specific audiences together to ensure better targeting and to ensure about people who have the same needs, to ensure that the company targeting them pulls the resources in an efficient manner, and wants to get the desired response from those group of people.
Wonderful. And when companies are looking into doing this, I'm sure there's more than one way of segmenting their market. So can you kind of talk us through what the different types or categories there is that entrepreneurs can be segmenting their market?
Yes. So we have, there are three common ways people or companies segment, or I say, well, no, yeah, there are three common ways, but there are three types of doing it. It's very weird. But first of all, you can segment through like homogeneous needs. So homogeneity is what it's called. So people who have like common needs within a particular segment. So for instance, if you are a beauty company and you have multiple brands, say like Sephora. Sephora's got like the skincare, but they've got makeup and they've got like the perfumes or all the kind of stuff. So homogeneity means I want to target people who've got like similar needs or desires. So the makeup segment, for instance, or the perfume segment, all those who are interested in skincare and lifestyle. So that's one. The second would be distinction, right? A company can decide to reach out to have a point of differentiation where they can reach out to a group of people that are very distinct and very unique and are not like very common. So take, for example, you have, as we're trying to push like diversity and inclusion, there's a lot of push by brands to reach more unique people that have not been catered to by the market for so long. So we're looking at people maybe from the disabled communities or those who are who identify differently sexually and all of that. So you can do that by having a point of differentiation. So that's a distinctive kind of segmentation. And lastly, you have like a reactive or reaction kind of segmentation. So people who react a similar way to your ad messaging or to your marketing communication. So those are the three broad ways: homogeneity, distinction or differentiation, and reactive. However, you can further break this down by like demographic, geography, psychography, behavioral. I think I would allow Eric to touch more on that, but yeah, so there are just multiple ways. And I think I would just wanted to underscore here that there is no one way to actually segment a customer. Like all that we are sharing are like broad marketing principles that we have seen have worked and have been applied over years and that have been pretty successful. However, every company is unique. They have their own objectives, they've got their own needs. So there is no one sure way to actually segment your customers. It's all up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can get incredibly granular with it, and there's a lot of intersectionalities that you can work into it as well. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I feel like the further you go in, the more you the bigger you get with it.
Yeah, the more research you have to do and all of that, it's just gets it's really interesting sometimes, if I'm being very honest, because like you have like subset of groups and subset of groups. It's like it gets very fascinating. But then sometimes when it comes to deploy, especially online, and that's where you have to then like, it's interesting to get the research and identify these groups and all of that. But then you realize that reaching sometimes like niche audiences or like very granular groups can get a bit like, there's some nuances to it that, as startup businesses, you have to consider like the cost, for instance. Can you afford like some of the unique ways in which to reach these people? What is the access to like the vehicle to reach them? Do they have access to those vehicles and stuff like that? But yeah.
Eric, do you have anything to sort of add to what Uche kind of outlined?
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, she was right on point on that. But I think, for me, when I think about market segmentation, based on the companies I've dealt with, it really comes down to understanding your customer's need. It's really as fundamental as like that. And I think at the early stage, for many early stage companies, it's even more critical because you're trying to really define yourself. And I know many founders and entrepreneurs I've dealt with over the years, they get really passionate about the solution they're devising to address the problem. The market segmentation helps you to actually look at it the other way, where you spend more time diving into the actual problem that the customers are facing. And then you take that to, really incorporate that into your marketing strategy, into your message, into your branding, so that when the product gets out there, it aligns with the need of the customer. So I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to, have you done your work to really understand the people you want to sell to and their need, and how does that really connect to the solution or the products you're trying to sell them? So it's extremely important. It can make or break a startup. So the more time you spend on really understanding that need of the customer. And I think is even more, critical when you take it international. Market segmentation in a local market might be a little bit easier, but when you add on the international nuances, it brings in a different layer of complexity.
Absolutely. And it's definitely not a one size fits all. It's, Canada's a fantastic sandbox for a lot of entrepreneurs when they're starting out here to really kind of hone in on their product and their brand. But yeah, it's critical when you're going into a new market to really understand their needs and how they prefer to be communicated with and all of those pieces. So thank you, Eric. Fabien, I'd love to go into a little bit about the free trade agreements or FTAs as you mentioned earlier. So can you talk us through a little bit about these agreements and what sort of benefit? Sorry, actually, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Maybe we can go into the Trade Commissioner support side of things.
Yes.
And then we'll go into free trade agreements.
No worries.
A little bit about what the Trade Commissioner does and how they support entrepreneurs.
Yes, so as I mentioned, the Trade Commissioner Service has offices across Canada. I mentioned 6, so almost, the representation is for each provinces and territories, but we can say we almost have one in each province. And my colleagues that are working in Canada are the first step to start your international process or exports abroad. So my recommendation would be to get in touch with the office that is located in your province or territory, and they will be able to meet with you and discuss your capability of exporting abroad. What are your goals? Which market are you targeting? Do you have a business plan? Have you thought about market segmentation, as my fellow colleagues just mentioned? And once they assess that you're ready and they provide you the preliminary advice, then they are able to connect you with our colleagues that are working abroad. So in the markets that you are actually targeting, in the embassies, high commissions, consulates across the globe. I don't know if it's the best idea right now to share in the chat, or maybe I can send it to you, Isabel, but we have a step-by-step guide that could be easily like a first step before even thinking about reaching out to the Trade Commissioner Service. So I would, encourage companies to go through that export guide and familiarize themselves with the process, especially if they've never exported abroad. And we also have a questionnaire that helps companies determine whether they are ready to go abroad, because the Trade Commissioner Service really deals with companies that are ready to go abroad. And what do I mean by ready? Well, first of all, your product is not a prototype, right? Your product is ready to be sold. You've tested the market a little bit, perhaps within Canada. Some companies might have tested it abroad already because the product or the service they're offering is, its use is more favorable in another market. Do you have the resources within your company to actually manage those international relations and do the follow-ups? Because once you get traction, then customers across the globe will start contacting you. Someone has to answer on the other side of the line, right? So that you maintain that momentum and reputation as well. So I see that you posted the export guide.
Yeah, no, they're
and the
fantastic.
quiz. That's perfect.
Yeah, no, and it's a fantastic point to, before you're kind of going into the nitty-gritty parts of market segmentation, ensuring that you are ready to export and going through that entire process. And that's something that we will touch on another webinar, but they're brilliant resources. So if you're not familiar with them, I encourage you to take a look after today's webinar to even take the quiz and see if you're ready to export. So what are some of the key benefits of employing market segmentations for early stage entrepreneurs that are looking, to take their business abroad to a new market? Maybe I'll ask Uchechi first, a key benefit for in your eyes.
I would say for startups, the one key benefit that I see is operational efficiency, right? Across like cost, time, and your resources like talent or your staff members. So when you think about exporting your business to another country, first of all, it's very daunting, because at Google, we cannot work with our partners to export outside of Canada. And there are a lot of things to consider when you want to export, right? But one of the key benefits of segmenting your audience, as Eric attested to, it's very important. Before you start segmenting, it's important to actually have clear goals. You have to understand what your business objective is. You need to understand what your marketing objective is. And then that would help you further identify, who do I want to target with this message? What is the desired outcome? What do I want to do? So when you're able to identify that, one of the key things that would help you to do is you know how to pool your resources. You're able to take stock of what you currently have and you allocate those resources to the segment that would ensure the highest profitability in the shortest possible time before you think about long term. So I would say that's one of the high level, like very important benefits that you get from segmentation, which is like operational efficiency. So that includes cost, time, and resources. And the second point to that, like I mentioned, is profitability, right? So you're able to see at least a higher return on your investment when you're very targeted with your messaging, because you're not just reaching all and sundry. So you're going to avoid waste and you're going to minimize your risk, especially as a startup. That's what we want to avoid, right? We have limited resources and we're trying to hit the bullseye. So we have to, one of the benefits of segmenting is you're going to be able to reduce that risk, and you're going to be able to at least reach a segment that you know would get you a desired outcome, which is profitability, which is sales or revenue growth, as the case may be. And a third benefit that I see to segmentation is also a stronger market differentiation and brand equity within your space, right? So as a business, you're not catered to everyone, right? Even Coca-Cola doesn't appeal to everybody. So as big as the business is, you're not reaching out to the entire world, the entire 8 billion population. So within your market or within your audience, when you're able to tailor your messaging and have a personalized feel to your messaging, that gives you a stronger foot in the door. You have a better brand equity and a stronger market differentiation. So people know what you're for. You have that increased top of mind awareness to say, like, if I want this, I can go to this particular brand, because like you have used your messaging to build that brand association with a category. So I'll say top level, those are like some of the three main benefits that I really see to segmenting your market.
Excellent. Yeah, no, fantastic points. Eric, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to follow, but I think, at the end of the day, it really comes down to, have you taken the time to understand the market? Like going to a foreign market or going international as an early stage, entrepreneur, it is a huge task. I don't know of any entrepreneur that takes your business international just for the fun of it. So you take it out there, hoping that will translate to increased sales, brand awareness. So really being able to get to the details of your segmentation, it means that your chances of succeeding in that foreign market becomes higher. And it is the pre-work that needs to happen before you even go. And I've seen, entrepreneurs that jump in because there's a market that everyone is talking about and it's hot, and they jump in and they're not ready. They can't really relate to the people. And going to a different market, if it's not in North America, even in North America, there are nuances to different states and different countries. So it's so critical taking the time to really do that homework, but I think even before, it helps you to devise your solution and your product. It educates you on how are you going to be able to increase sales at the end of the day. Because I mean, as a business owner, that's your ultimate goal. You want to increase sales, you want to sell in foreign market, and to be able to do that, understanding that market is what is going to really define your success when you go abroad.
Mhm. Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the bottom line is always very important, even when you're going into exporting. Fabien, so now, so I'm not jumping ahead now. I'd like to delve a little bit more into free trade agreements, and
Yes.
why should entrepreneurs be paying attention to these when they're looking at the different markets that they'd like to go into?
Sure. But just before I move on to that topic, I wanted to add to my colleagues, like, just want to take a step back on market segment. Yes, there's the market segmentation, but there's also the segmentation of markets. So too many times we see new entrepreneurs telling us, I want to export to Europe, I want to export to Asia, I want to export to Latin America. But Latin America or Asia is not one country, right? Europe is not one market. It is in terms of some of the regulations with the European Union, but it's not the same thing if you want to enter Germany than if you want to enter France, right? So you have to think about that as well. There are many considerations, cultural, language, and so on. So in terms of free trade agreements, in our case, well, you might know that Canada has 15 free trade agreements. That accounts for 51, soon 51 markets. So the biggest free trade agreements we have CUSMA with the United States and Mexico. We have CETA with the European Union, and we also have CPTP with the Asia Pacific countries. And why are those agreements important? Well, they definitely give us a competitive advantage over other companies that are coming from different markets that don't have those free trade agreements, because those free trade agreements give us a preferential access in terms of transparency. So the rules of doing trade in that specific market are clear and accessible to Canadian entrepreneurs. They give us preferential access in terms of tariffs. So, for example, if I'm exporting, I don't know, pencils, I might have 0% tariff because of a free trade agreement I have with Europe, whereas my competitors coming from an African country, for example, might have to pay 5% tariff on that same pencil. So you see that already we have this access that's allowing us to be more competitive and easing, if I can say it this way, doing trade, make it more accessible, understandable for Canadian businesses.
And Isabel, if I can add to
Yeah.
Fabien quickly, in my previous roles working with the trade commissioners, having that detailed understanding of the customer you want to serve in that foreign market, not only does it help you, but also helps the organizations and entities who can support you. Because the trade commissioners, they are humans and they have limited resources. It's not like they can help every Canadian business trying to go international. So being able to clearly articulate, the need that you're trying to address in a foreign market, I think, to Fabien's earlier point, it makes it so much easier for them to pinpoint you to the right resources, as well as the right, contact or individual in that foreign market that could really help you.
Mhm. Excellent
I
point. Yeah.
agree, 100%. Yeah.
And Fabien, you mentioned tariffs.
Yes.
Can you maybe go into that just a little bit more? And I know there's also a tool that the Trade Commissioner has that's
Yes.
useful in finding these.
Yeah, so we do have a tool that helps you find your tariff classification. But just before I talk about that tool, every products And the caveat here is that the product needs to be tangible because services are not subject to tariffs at the border because they're non-tangible. And so far, we haven't found any functional way of applying any tariff to services. But if you have a tangible product, you need to have or find out what is your H code. So every product on this planet that you just look around everything that you see has a tariff, not a tariff, but an HS code associated. And with that HS code, you're able to find out what is the tariff that you will be paying at the border once you'll export your product. I don't know, Isabel, if we have a few minutes, I can do a quick demo of the tariff finder,
Yeah.
which was developed by EDC, BDC, and Trade Commissioner Service. It's very user-friendly. The only exception is that it's only applicable for markets where we have a free trade agreement, but we have 51 partners. So that's a vast, choice of possible markets. So I don't know if I can, you can let me share my screen.
You should be able to
Is that
share.
at the bottom?
Yes, yeah, the green button that says share screen, and you should be able to go from there.
Oh yeah. So just give me a second.
And for attendees, my colleague Crystal has put in the link to it as well. Any links that we share in the chat, we will save them and send them in our next newsletter for Startup Global. So don't worry about missing anything.
So even without the link, it's super easy. Can you see what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay. So you go on Google, first result here, you access the page. This is what it looks like when you land on that page. Then you click on Get Started and you scroll down a little bit. And here is the information that you need to enter. In this case, I think for the purpose of this exercise, we'll go with I am exporting from Canada to, for this exercise, just to show you the difference, I'm going to go with a market where we have 2 free trade agreements. So for example, Chile. And in this bar here, you're able to either enter the HS code of your product if you already know your HS code, or enter some keywords describing your product, and this tool should be able to find the code that is associated with that product. So I did the exercise a little bit earlier, so I'm just going to type in, for example, a bench. Okay, that's enough for the tool to find a potential tariff. Now you see this develops like a tree of like a decision tree, so you have to narrow down your research. So you decide, or well, you don't decide because you know what your product is made of, but you click on, for example, metal, and you scroll down a little bit, you press OK. Is your bench upholstered or not? We'll go with upholstered. Press OK. And then it's important to click here because otherwise you won't be able to go and select the product. So you press confirm, and then you have your HS code. This is very useful when dealing with, international markets. Mindful that this is not a tool that gives like a 100% decision. Canada is suggesting tariff codes, but at the end of the day, it is really the border agency of the importing market that has their final word. And luckily, with the free trade agreements we've negotiated, you are able to ask for what we call an advance ruling. An advance ruling is you're basically submitting a request to the importing country, to the border agency, asking, I have this product, I think that the HS code is this one for your market, is it correct? And then they reply and they say yes, or they provide you with the correct HS code. And this is a binding decision. So when you'll start exporting with that code and with that decision in hand, they have to honor it. Okay. And if you go down, you see here under Canada, Chile FTA, the tariffs for 2023, it's 0%. They haven't updated the tariffs yet for next year and the year after, but it's going to be 0%. It doesn't increase. And under CPTPP, CPTPP entered into force in Chile in 2023. It's still 0%. But you can come up with a situation where the tariff is not the same because each agreement sets their own rules. You just need to make sure that you meet what we call the rules of origin of that market. So was the product made in one of the markets of this specific agreement, or does it have sufficient content or transformation to be considered as originating? And then if it is originating, you are allowed to pay that tariff that we have negotiated. So that's really a quick overview of that tool, but I really encourage you to go and check it out because it's very easy to use, super user friendly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Fabien. Yeah, and thank you for the demo. It is, yeah, it's incredibly user friendly, and especially if you're unfamiliar with tariffs, or if you don't have the HS code, it really brings you through it step by step. So thank you for showing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a question, interesting question in the chat. It says, why doesn't it have China for importing? It doesn't have China for importing, nor does it have China for exporting, because we don't have a free trade agreement with China. So it's only the countries with which we have a free trade agreement. For those other countries, you would have to go on the World Customs Organization website and use their research tool there which is a little bit less user-friendly than the Tariff Finder, but that's another way to do it.
Great, amazing. Thank you so much for answering that question. We have another question that is a great one to bring up as well, because obviously for those tariff codes, they're very much for physical products, but what about digital products? So I'll throw that out to all of our speakers. Can anyone speak to Catherine ask this question when you're exporting a digital product?
Maybe I can jump in for that, and then my colleagues Uche and Eric can complement. So for services, there are no tariffs at the border. So for now, every country in the world is kind of playing on the same level. But what do we offer for services in terms of free trade agreements? Transparency, so our rules are clear when exporting services to the host country. We have preferential access for business people, employees to enter that market, to serve the clients with their service, to sell the service there that other countries may not have. We have, some clauses for intellectual property, also for the hosting of data or code or source code sharing. These are all protected under free trade agreements, whereas they're not if you're outside of that agreement. So that's one. That's the beginning of an answer. I don't know if my colleagues have anything to add.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Fabien. Yeah, Uche or Eric, anything to add to that piece?
Maybe I can go. thank you, Fabien, for demonstrating that. I think it's really important to also understand that, in as much as it's good to start with the countries that we have free trade agreement with, you shouldn't be limited by those countries. Yeah, we've got a lot of them out there, but I've had a lot of exporters who engage with me, and it was like, which country should I start with? There are some countries that are safe, and Canada has a trading relationship with them, but we don't have those free trade agreements. And as a new entrant to international trade, you should be leveraging those countries as well. You just have to do your homework to really understand the legal implications, the taxation for you to enter. And on the digital side, I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity these days. You can be sitting anywhere in the world and really sell your product all around. But I think there is one element you still have to be cognizant of, is the market that you sell into. Is there a market that you want your brand associated with? So yeah, you're now dealing with border crossing, but there are some implications these days that either your investors or partners that you're dealing with want to make sure that you're dealing with in countries that Canada has good working or trading relationships with, that are countries that abide by the same kind of rules and respect for human rights and those kind of things. So yeah, there are nuances even in the digital space that you have to be aware of.
Thank you. And so, Catherine, I hope that answers your question. And thank you very much for asking that. So we've got just over 15 minutes left, and there's a few other pieces of some points that I want to go into. But again, attendees, if you have any questions, please feel free to add it to the Q&A box in the bottom bar, and we'll do our best to get to it. That's why we're here. We're here to help you in your journey. So if you have any specific questions, please don't be afraid to ask. So I'd love to kind of, for entrepreneurs that are going into or starting that process of segmentating their market, what are some of like the effective strategies or tools that they can use to like identify and analyze these segments? Uchechi, maybe can I go to you first and talk about the different tools and resources that Google has?
Okay, so we have an externally friendly tool. It's called Market Finder, and I can just dropping the
Wonderful, thank you.
Link over here. So Market Finder helps you do a couple of things. It helps you to, first of all, gauge your export readiness, which I think Fabien touched to earlier, to see if your business is actually primed to export outside of Canada. But secondly, it also helps you with the audience size. So I think it splits into like geography. So you decide, first of all, which gives you the top 3 countries. And if you want to also target the United States specifically, which is one of the, at least within Google, we know like a large percentage of our Canadian businesses export to the US first, due to multiple reasons like proximity, ease of similar cultures a bit, is of the same language. We speak English, so there isn't much localization needed to export to the US. But Market Finder helps you to even further break down which cities or which states within the US would pose like a better fit for your business. So if you want to get really granular into targeting specific states in the US, especially with startups, if you don't have a lot of budget to target the entire US, we know that the US economy is very big, but it's also highly competitive. So Market Finder can help you identify that. And lastly, it can also help you look at the operational levers that you have to fine-tune within your business to ensure that you are operating at peak efficiency in those markets. So customer experience, your payment methods, are they localized to those particular markets? Fabien mentioned we have trade agreements with the EU, but he also said that the EU is not just one country, it's different, right? So you've got Germany and you've got all the other countries in the European Union. And for payments, it's important to underscore, like I noticed that many Canadian businesses just go in there, especially those who've got digital products, right? Those are like the businesses that are the easiest to scale internationally, but also sometimes it could be the trickiest. And when you don't have localized web experiences or even payment methods, that could also impact your segmentation, right? So For instance, in Germany, like they use more bank transfers. They are not like credit card. They don't use a lot of credit and debit cards like we use in North America. So as a Canadian business, you might just assume that, well, I just have to have like PayPal or e-wallet and I'm good to go. But you could be missing out on a chunk of the market because more than 50% of Germans prefer to use bank transfers as their preferred payment method. So it's important to have those things factored in, and Market Finder would help you break that out. A second tool that I think most businesses who are online would have readily is like Google Analytics, which is, or more recently GA4. So you can get a ton of information from your website and from engagement with your customers on your website. Look at the location, look at the volume of traffic, where is it coming from, what's the percentage, what's the average dwell time session, what pages are they spending the most time on, where are the conversions coming from, is it apps, is it more on my site? Like all of this first party data, especially as we're moving into a more privacy centered world, can help you identify the audiences that will give you the most profitability or revenue or sales growth for your business. And I would say also, lastly, just some third-party sources and public records on consumer insights are also very, they're free tools that you can use to also identify or even select your preferred customer audience. So the United States, like I think Census Bureau has information. We have like all of this public records that you can access for free that can give you a lot of insights as to growth of a particular segment. Like for instance, we know that Gen Zs are the hot thing right now and everyone wants to target the Gen Zs, right? So there are lots of information about that on, how fast are they growing? What are their media consumption habits? How can you better reach them? So third-party sources and public records like that can really be super helpful.
Amazing, thank you. And yeah, like to your point, your first point about the Google Market Finder and Germany as an example, and how they're their preferred payment methods. I doing that sort of research and knowing that about that specific market also helps you create trust with your new customer base. And and it's so if they're seeing a website that's tailored to them and a payment method that's tailored to how they're used to paying. I remember someone during another session talked about how if they're dealing with a business that's not Canadian and they don't have a website that ends in .ca, there's a little bit of a distrust there because they're like, am I paying in USD or am I paying in Canadian? Or like even small things like that can really make the difference with your customer either trusting you or not. So fantastic point. Fabien, I know that the TCS also have a sort of similar tool, a market potential finder, if you'd like to speak to that a little bit.
Yes, sure. I don't think it's as well developed as Google's one in terms of how many countries we've incorporated. It's still a tool in development. The only caveat is that this is a tool that is internal, so only trade commissioners for now have access to that tool. That's why I encourage companies to enter in contact with my colleagues in the regional offices, and they will use this tool with the client to determine where is the most potential for a specific product with the HS code that I discussed earlier in the markets that we have available on that platform. The tool gives like a kind of a scoring. It uses empirical data as well as knowledge that we gather from our colleagues that are on the field working in the embassies. And so it's really giving like an assessment of the level of potential for that product in that market. I would, however, mention that it has certain limitations. It's a scoring based on customer preferences, the needs in the market, but it doesn't take into account, for example, cultural differences, means of payment, as Uche mentioned. It's really the pure scoring of the needs for that product and, how popular or how in demand it is in that market. So I strongly encourage you to enter in contact with my fellow colleagues. And by the way, I haven't mentioned it, but working with the Trade Commissioner service is free of charge. So there's another incentive to do it as early as possible. Yeah.
For sure. Fabien, I wonder if there's what's the best way for an entrepreneur to get in contact with the Trade Commissioner Service and then to be put in contact with their regional office?
Yeah. Very good question. So first of all, answer the quiz that was posted in the chat, because as I mentioned, if you're not exporter ready, we will most likely not be able to support the company, or we'll just refer them to national, local organization that will help them, get up to speed. And my favorite way of entry, like if I was a company, you go on Google and you can type "find my trade commissioner." You will end up on the Trade Commissioner Service homepage. Then it will ask you like, where do you live, like in terms of province, what sector are you in, and then once you enter that data, you press search and it will give you the contact for that specific office, and they will enter then in contact with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so we have a few
My
minutes
pleasure.
left. And I think I'd like to kind of end the conversation on just some advice for our attendees and then anyone else that watches the recording. So are there any challenges or potential pitfalls that startup companies should be aware of when they're implementing market segmentation? So sort of any do's or don'ts, really. Eric, maybe I can go to you first.
Yeah. So I think, the tools and the digital softwares and the tools that my colleagues shared, they are so important, but it is critical to also bring the human element to it. Canada has a wonderful and thriving startup community. So I think when you are figuring out what market and, the different segments of the market that you want to approach, you should leverage the startup community in Canada. The chances are a problem that you're encountering or how you trying to define your success in that market, someone have already encountered that. So really taking advantage of colleagues or other startups in Canada, and another group that I don't think we mentioned, but it's been really helpful for some of the companies I've worked with, is the Chamber of Commerce. They really bring a human element to understanding those markets and how you can really enter and succeed. So you really have to, at the end of the day, you have to just maybe pick up the phone and talk to someone, or maybe go to one of the startup accelerators or innovation hubs to really understand from the human standpoint what is going on in this market, how does it align with my product or services, because so if someone have gone down that path, you can certainly learn from their experience, and that will probably reduce the amount of time you have to do on your research, and it'll give you a different perspective on how to succeed. Because most startup founders, they're doing everything by themselves. So if you can minimize on some of these work, leverage some of the information or experiences that already exist, that'll be helpful. But I think we can talk about all the different strategies. It comes down to take the time to understand the people you want to serve. The people you want your services or your product to really address that problem. I think Uchechi, who may have mentioned earlier, going in thinking that it is different and therefore there has to be some tweaks. You can approach a continent or even a country with that homogeneous mindset that, if I have sold to someone in Ghana, for example, that same product will sell in Nigeria, which culturally might be quite similar, but you have to spend the time. And sometimes it might mean that you have to be on the ground, which, often a lot of entrepreneurs really skip that piece. But you have to really either go there on the ground to understand those people and their needs, or leverage the resources like trade services.
Mhm. Excellent points. Thank you, Eric. Uche, anything to add to that?
I mean, Eric pretty much said it all, but the do's, I think we've touched on them, like how to do that. But some of the pitfalls is just not having or not doing adequate research before, scaling your business abroad or internationally. So like Eric said, there are tons of free resources, tons of free data that would give you insights. And I would encourage every business to not just look at like your business segment and be like, would it be successful here? But what are some of the social, political, economic impact of like what's going on in that country that could potentially impact your customers and invariably your business, right? Because they are still living within the confines of a particular environment. So for instance, we have seen cases where customers who wanted to export to the UK, for instance. So when you look at like the numbers, the UK is a viable market for Canadian businesses to export into. First, it's an English first market. Secondly, it has a very good population, has a good like disposable income, GDP is positive, but we also have to understand the impact of Brexit, for instance, on the average UK customer, the prices of energy going up from the Russia-Ukraine war, and all of these have taken like a huge chunk of the consumer share of wallet, as they are now more survival driven than splurging on luxuries and stuff like that. So if as a business you just look at the high level data without understanding how this could potentially impact your customer, and specifically if you then have a very niche product which one could consider as non-essential, it's like a nice to have, not a need to have, then you need to evaluate your strategy. Like, okay, bearing in mind that my average customer in this market is survival driven, how do I position my brand to tap into that essentialism that is key in that market? So doing a robust research across multiple levels and ensuring that you are well primed. Again, payment method, customer experience, logistics, if you have a physical business, right? Some countries prefer local couriers, like the UK, for instance, prefer having the Royal Mail than having like other ones. So like they're very different things that would help you just ensure that you are very efficient as you're going into this market. And lastly, one pitfall that I see sometimes is going too niche such that there is no volume for your business specifically. People like I think Eric touched on it earlier, some businesses think in reverse. They think about how nice the product is to them, how it sounds. Seems like it would change the world, especially now that sustainability and environmental friendly products, eco-friendly products are on the rise. There are a lot of innovation with products and all, but when you innovate, when you build those products, is there a market for that product? Or are you like the only one in your family who loves the product, right? So innovation is great, but you have to understand that there needs to be a viable market at long term also, to ensure that you don't burn out, within a year or two of beginning operation. So yeah, just be careful.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you, Uche. Fabien, any final words to add to that piece?
Yes, well, I think my colleagues have said a lot, and they would be definitely great trade commissioners. But I think I want to stress out the importance of, understanding your market, but also understanding the export process. And you have pasted the link for the guide in the chat, so please consult that. It gives you all the steps that you should consider before even exporting. But the most common, I would say, within our network that we see is companies trying to target too many markets at the same time. It's better to target, smaller but do it well, than too many and being, all over the place and lost and not having the resources in Canada to answer the needs of those markets, or also burning potential contacts, because there are cultures where you need to foster the relationship, you need to be on the ground, you need to keep the relationship alive. So sometimes there's no second chance. So you really have to be careful with that.
Fantastic exit points from all of our speakers, and thank you so much for ending on those do's and don'ts for our attendees. So that's really the end of it. I'm going to launch a very quick feedback poll for our attendees. We always like to hear how you've enjoyed the session and any feedback that we can use to help better your experience in future sessions. But thank you so much for attending today's session. Really appreciate you all joining us. And an even bigger thank you to our speakers, Fabien, Uchechi, and Eric, for donating your time and expertise. I've certainly learned a lot, so I really hope that our attendees have too. And once again, would like to thank our co-presenting partners, Export Development Canada, the Trade Commissioner Service, UPS and Desjardins, as well as our community of ecosystem support partners. Our next webinar will be November 9th. We'll share the link in the chat on how you can register. And that's all about helping to assess your export readiness. So some pieces of what we talked about today, we'll kind of put that into action in that webinar. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to leave the room open for a few minutes if you're still filling out the feedback poll. But to our speakers, thank you again, and feel free to sign off now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.